Welcome again. Today I have a story called The House on Ash Lane. Let's get start. It started with a letter, neatly folded, slipped under the door on a rainy morning. Claire almost missed it. She was late for work, clutching her coffee, cursing the weather. The envelope was pale gray, damp at the corners, her name written in careful black ink. Claire Holloway. You are invited. No return address. No sender. Just that. An invitation. Inside, the message was short. You are cordially invited to the reading of the Holloway family will. Ash Lane. Saturday. Midnight. Attendance mandatory. Claire stared at it, confused. Holloway was her last name, of course, but she didn't have much of a family. No parents, no siblings. Just Aunt Miriam, who died last year. That was it. And she'd never heard of Ash Lane. By noon, she'd convinced herself it was some kind of prank. Forgotten cousin, distant relative, something stupid like that. But that night, when she mentioned it to her friend Ben over drinks, he looked at her like she'd said a ghost whispered in her ear. Ash Lane. He repeated, voice low. You mean that Ash Lane? Claire frowned. What are you talking about? Ben leaned in. That's not a street anymore. It's a ruin. Abandoned after the fires in 93. No one goes there. No one's supposed to be there. Claire gave a nervous laugh. You're screwing with me. I'm not, Ben said quietly. That place, it's bad, Claire. It was just a letter. Paper and ink. What harm could it do? Still, when Saturday came, Claire found herself driving beneath the heavy clouds, windshield wipers beating nervously, heading toward a street the GPS refused to recognize. At the entrance to Ash Lane, the road cracked beneath her tires like brittle bones. The trees on either side were skeletal, reaching for the sky like broken fingers. And at the end of the road stood the house. A monstrous, sagging structure with blackened windows and ivy curling around its frame like veins on pale skin. It looked abandoned, empty, but somewhere deep inside, Claire thought she saw movement. A flicker of something behind the glass. Her phone had no signal. The dashboard clock blinked 12 o'clock in sharp green numbers. Then came the sound. Soft, almost like laughter. Or maybe whispering. The front door opened by itself. And inside, candlelight. Someone, or something, was waiting for her. Claire's fingers hovered over her car keys, her instinct screaming leave now. But curiosity, that old, traitorous thing, had a firm grip on her. And the invitation had said, mandatory. With a shaky breath, she stepped out of the car. Gravel crunched under her boots, sharp against the unnatural silence. No birds. No insects. Just the hum of the wind moving through dead branches. The door hung open, swaying gently. The warm glow of candlelight spilled out, flickering against the dark. As Claire crossed the threshold, the scent hit her first. Dust, mildew, and something else underneath. Something coppery. Metallic. Like old blood. The entry hall was vast, the ceiling high and shadowed. Wallpaper peeled like curling skin. The candles were arranged neatly on every surface. Mantels, shelves, the floor itself, casting long, twitching shadows. And then, the voices. Soft, indistinct, like a conversation happening in the next room. Hello, Claire called, her voice thin in the empty space. I got this invitation. Footsteps behind her. She spun around, heart in her throat. A woman stood there, dressed in an old-fashioned black dress, high-collared and buttoned to the throat. Her face was pale, her eyes sunken. But what unsettled Claire most was her expression. Not anger or fear, but a faint smile, like someone amused by a private joke. You're late, the woman whispered. I didn't. Who are you? The woman tilted her head slightly. Family. Before Claire could respond, a second figure emerged from the shadows. Then a third. And a fourth. Men, women, all dressed in faded clothes decades out of fashion, their skin pale, their eyes glassy like dolls left out in the rain. The parlor door creaked open. More candles. And more figures seated at a massive, dust-covered dining table, their chairs arranged neatly as if for a formal meal. Every seat was filled. And every occupant stared at her with the same knowing smile. The woman behind her gently placed a hand on Claire's shoulder. It was cold as marble. "We've been waiting for you, dear," she murmured. The last Holloway. Claire's mind reeled. Last. There were no family reunions. No secret cousins. But then she looked closer at the seated figures. Some she recognized. Dim, dusty photos from her childhood. Great Uncle Howard. Aunt Miriam. Faces long gone, but here, impossibly, grotesquely preserved. All of them dead. All of them waiting. And the empty chair at the head of the table. It was hers. Claire's legs locked in place, her mind screaming for her to run, to get out before whatever this was became something worse. But her body didn't move. The cold hand on her shoulder was too heavy. Too final. The woman, family, she'd called herself, guided her gently toward the table. "Please," she whispered in that voice like brittle leaves, "don't embarrass us. Sit. The reading is about to begin." Claire stumbled forward, her boots kicking up clouds of dust as she was led to the high-backed chair at the head of the table. Every other occupant watched her with dead, glassy eyes, but their smiles never faltered. When she sat, she could see them better. Some of them were barely more than skeletons in Sunday clothes, flesh taut and dried like paper stretched over wire. Others looked almost fresh, too fresh, like they hadn't been dead long at all. Directly across from her sat Aunt Miriam, her mouth twisted in the same dry smile Claire remembered from childhood. Except her eyes were wrong. Empty. Hollow. Something shuffled behind her. Another figure emerged. A tall, thin man in a moth-eaten suit. His face was gaunt, and where his eyes should have been were only black pits. He held a long scroll of yellowing parchment, tied with a crimson ribbon. "The reading," the man rasped, voice like sandpaper on bone. "As dictated by the Holloway bloodline." He untied the scroll. It unfurled across the table like an ancient tongue. Claire opened her mouth to scream, to protest, to do something, but the words caught in her throat like tangled wire. The candle flames guttered violently, making shadows crawl along the walls like living things. The man began to read. "We, the undying of the Holloway line, do hereby bequeath our legacy to the last of our blood." Claire's heart hammered. Her eyes darted to the windows, but all she could see was thick, pulsing blackness pressing up against the glass, as though the night itself were alive, watching, waiting. "For in the blood of the Holloways," the voice continued, "is the debt. And the debt must be paid." One by one, the seated corpses began to hum. Low. Discordant. The sound vibrated in her bones. The land. The house. The name. All cursed. All bound. Until the last of the line pays in full. Claire tried to stand, but her body was frozen. Her hands gripped the arms of the chair, nails biting into the rotting wood. Aunt Miriam leaned forward now, her head tilting grotesquely to one side, bones cracking softly. "You were always the lucky one," Miriam whispered, her voice rotten with mock sweetness. "Born out. Away from this place. Away from the deal we made." Claire's head throbbed. She remembered stories, half-forgotten things her mother had told her as bedtime tales. The Holloways were once rich, powerful, but something had happened. Something dark. A deal. A curse. The man with the scroll kept reading, but now his words were no longer English. They were older, sharper, filled with consonants that didn't belong in any human mouth. The flames of the candles rose higher. Shadows moved faster. And then the scroll reader's hollow eye sockets locked directly onto Claire. "Do you accept the inheritance?" The humming stopped. Silence swallowed the room like a closing fist. Claire's lips trembled. "What happens if I say no?" she thought. Aunt Miriam grinned wider, teeth yellow and broken. "You don't get to say no, dear." The scroll dropped to the floor, and the table began to shake. Somewhere beneath the house, something huge stirred. And from the blackness outside, something began to knock on the windows. Slow, rhythmic, like an invitation. Or a warning. Knock. The sound echoed through the parlor like the ticking of a giant, broken clock. Slow, heavy, wrong. Knock, knock. Each thud sent small ripples through the dusty plates and tarnished silverware on the table. The flames of the candles bent toward the windows as if pulled by the force outside. Claire's breath came in ragged bursts now. Her hands were slick with sweat, her nails cracked from gripping the chair too tightly. The knocking wasn't random. It was deliberate, steady. And it was getting closer. She looked again at the others around the table. Hollow eyes, grinning mouths, skin stretched too tightly or sagging like wet paper. They were all smiling because they knew. They knew exactly what was outside. The debt, Aunt Miriam murmured, her tongue darting out over dry lips, always comes to collect. Claire forced herself to speak, her voice shaking but steady beneath the terror. What debt? What did you do? For the first time, the room reacted. The humming stopped completely. Even the flames seemed to shrink away, leaving only the sound of that slow, purposeful knocking at the glass. Then, from behind the parlor door, came a new sound. Scraping. Like fingernails dragging across wood. The man with the hollow eyes lowered his scroll. It was your great-grandfather, he rasped, throat bubbling wetly. He wanted power, wealth, to make the Holloways great. So he called on the thing beneath the roots of this land. Aunt Miriam's head tilted, smiling wider. And it listened. The flames flared again, bathing her skeletal face in sharp orange. In return, she whispered, it wanted blood. And so every generation, one Holloway was chosen to stay behind, to feed it. The weight of it sank in Claire's chest like lead. That's why you all stayed, Miriam said softly. Paid. And now, it's your turn. Knock. Knock. The windows spider webbed, tiny cracks racing through the glass like veins. From beyond, something huge pressed against the surface, shapeless, blacker than night, shifting like smoke but thick, like oil. And then she heard it. A voice behind the knocking. No language, no words, just hunger. You can't make me, Claire choked out, struggling against the invisible weight holding her in the chair. I didn't agree to this. I didn't ask for any of it. The room seemed to lean closer to her. The dead grinned wider. It doesn't matter, whispered the hollow-eyed man. Your blood said yes long before you were born. Suddenly, crash. The windows exploded inward, shards of glass spinning through the air like deadly glitter. The black thing poured into the room, not crawling, not slithering, but falling, like smoke being sucked downward into an unseen pit. The cold was immediate, deep, bone-cutting. Claire could hear them all now. The voices of the dead, the betrayed, the cursed, moaning softly beneath the roaring of that oily void. And then, something else. A whisper, just for her, buried in the storm. You don't have to stay. For a heartbeat, she thought it was her imagination. But the voice came again. Firm, urgent. The dead as blood. Any blood. Her eyes flicked to Aunt Miriam, who was leaning closer, her bony hand stroking Claire's hair as though soothing her before death. Claire's mind snapped into focus. Any blood. She moved fast. Her hand shot to the tarnished dinner knife by her plate, rusted but sharp enough. Before the cold could steal her strength completely, she plunged the blade into Aunt Miriam's withered throat. Miriam shrieked. Not with pain, but with anger, betrayal flashing across her rotting features. Black, viscous blood oozed from the wound, steaming where it hit the floor. The thing in the room paused. The swirling smoke recoiled slightly, almost curious. Claire stood, shaking, holding the bloody knife like a talisman. This is your payment, she hissed, voice trembling with rage. Take her. Aunt Miriam's eyes rolled back, her mouth opening in a long, silent scream. The blackness moved. Fast. It surged over the table, swallowing Miriam in a heartbeat. The other seated corpses began to cry out, voices echoing, blending together in a rising wave of terror. Claire didn't wait. She sprinted for the shattered window, boots crunching over glass, and dove through. Behind her, the parlor filled with shrieks and laughter as the darkness fed. The last thing she heard as she fled into the night was Aunt Miriam's voice, distant, echoing. You can't outrun the family forever, dear. And far beneath the ground, something laughed. The ground outside was slick with mud and rain, sharp with broken glass. Claire hit the earth hard, gasping, lungs burning, palms torn open by the fall. Behind her, the old house pulsed like a living thing, Windows shattered, black tendrils spilling out into the storm. The screams from inside rose in a sickening chorus, muffled by the wet howl of the wind. She staggered to her feet, slipping, almost falling again, but adrenaline pushed her onward. Somewhere behind, she heard a window frame tear loose and splinter against the broken porch. Something was coming. Lightning flashed. For one horrifying second, she saw the black shape at the doorway, something formless, massive, but wearing parts of the people it had devoured. Bits of old clothing fluttered from the rolling blackness like forgotten flags, bones tangled inside it like driftwood trapped in dark waves. Miriam's crooked smile floated for a moment in the smoke before dissolving entirely. Claire sprinted. The trees of Ash Lane blurred past her, skeletal limbs tearing at her coat, grabbing at her hair. She didn't care. She could barely breathe, barely think, except for one single idea screaming through her brain. Get off this road. Get away from this house. Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop. But as she reached the cracked gravel driveway, the blackness surged forward, faster than smoke, faster than storm winds, alive with hunger. Her foot hit something hard. She stumbled. Fell. The invitation. It was lying on the ground, soaked, the ink bleeding. Attendance mandatory. A cruel joke. Even the paper was against her. The thing was almost on her now, tendrils reaching, curling like fingers, stretching for her throat, her face, her soul. And then, honk. Headlights. A blaring horn cut through the storm, followed by screeching tires. Claire barely rolled aside as a beat-up pickup truck barreled into view, skidding in the mud. The black smoke recoiled slightly, curling upward in confusion. Claire. A voice shouted. Ben. The passenger door flew open. Claire lunged, grabbing the frame, dragging herself into the seat as Ben floored the gas. The truck roared in protest, fishtailing wildly before finding grip. Behind them, the blackness lunged, tendrils snapping at the bumper. One managed to catch a side mirror and tore it clean off like a twig. Ben didn't slow down. The truck screamed down the broken lane, tires spitting gravel, engine howling like a wounded animal. They didn't stop until Ash Lane was far behind them and the cracked pavement gave way to the smoother asphalt of the highway. Only then did Claire collapse against the seat, body shuddering, throat raw. Ben kept glancing at her. What the hell was that? Claire didn't answer. She just stared out the window, watching the blackness of the woods behind them slowly disappear in the rearview mirror. But in her chest, she knew it wasn't over. It wasn't finished with her. Not yet. The Holloway bloodline was cursed. And she was the last of it. For now. By the time they reached town, the rain had stopped. The streets glistened under the glow of old sodium lamps, casting everything in a sick, yellow light. The world felt wrong, like something important had been scraped away during their escape. Ben parked outside a shuttered convenience store, breathing hard, gripping the wheel until his knuckles were white. Start talking, he said finally, eyes not meeting hers. What was that? Claire couldn't answer right away. Her teeth were chattering. Not from cold, but from the things she saw in the truck's side mirror just before they sped away. Not the black smoke. Not the broken house. Her own reflection. There, for just a split second, something had flickered in her eyes. Not her usual brown, but a faint, almost imperceptible glow. Red, deep in the pupils, like a coal buried in ash. A mark. The curse wasn't done with her. It's family stuff, she finally said, voice hoarse. Old. Rotten. I don't even know how to explain it. Ben stared at her now, hard. You're bleeding, he said. Your hands. Claire looked down. Thin, crisscrossing cuts lined her palms where the glass had bitten deep. The blood wasn't dripping. It was coagulating. Thick. Too thick. And it wasn't red anymore. It was black. She tried to wipe it on her jeans, panic rising, but no matter how she rubbed, the dark smears only spread, oily and slow. Claire, Ben whispered. His voice had changed. Not scared. Careful. What? You've got something on your neck. She reached up instinctively, fingers brushing the skin below her ear. It was warm, raised. When she pressed harder, the shape made her stomach drop. A symbol. Something carved there, under the skin, like it had been branded onto her by unseen hands. What is it? She croaked, already dreading the answer. Ben hesitated. Then, a sigil. Like, old magic. I've seen it before. He swallowed, looking like he regretted opening his mouth. Claire locked eyes with him. You've seen it before. Where? Ben ran a hand over his face. That's not just a family curse, Claire. That's binding magic. Blood magic. Someone marked you. Who? Before Ben could answer, the truck's headlights flickered once. Then again. And then the engine died, the dashboard going dark. Silence. And then, tap, tap. Both of them froze. Slowly, almost against her will, Claire turned to the windshield. A figure stood in front of the truck. It was a woman, tall and thin, wearing an ancient funeral dress, the lace stained and rotting. Her skin was pale. Her eyes gleamed with recognition. Aunt Miriam. But not as a corpse this time. Not hollow. Not smiling. Alive. Somehow alive. Her lips moved, and though Claire couldn't hear the words, she could read them clearly through the fog on the glass. Blood isn't enough. The windows fogged around her shaped like breath on cold glass, the words lingering like smoke. And then Aunt Miriam smiled again, wider than before, and disappeared into nothing, leaving only that sick symbol burning faintly under Claire's skin. Whatever debt the Holloways owed, it wasn't paid. Not yet. And next time, Claire knew, it wouldn't just be her blood the thing wanted. The truck sat dead in the middle of the empty street, swallowed by thick fog rolling in from nowhere. Claire's breath made small clouds on the windshield as she stared at the spot where Aunt Miriam had stood. Nothing there now. Just the faint, greasy imprint of her smile on the glass. Ben tried the ignition again. Nothing but a sickening click 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 of a dead engine. This is bad, he muttered. Really bad. Claire didn't respond. She was staring at her hands, the oily black blood pooling in the creases of her skin, drying in sticky webs across her wrists. And that mark on her neck. It itched, like a splinter burrowed deep beneath the flesh. Then she felt it. A pulse beneath the symbol. Ba dump. Ba dump. It was sinking to her heartbeat. Or maybe it was becoming her heartbeat. Ben, she whispered. What happens if this thing takes me? Ben's face twisted, torn between honesty and mercy. If you're marked, if that sigil's what I think it is, it means you're not just part of the debt. You are the debt. Claire's stomach turned cold. What does that mean? It means, Ben said quietly, something claimed you before you were born. That thing wants your life in full. Your soul, your blood, everything you are. And if it doesn't get you. The fog outside shifted. Something moved inside it. A shape. Tall. Thin. Cloaked in what looked like rags or funeral robes, trailing behind like liquid shadow. No face. No hands. Just two glinting red eyes deep beneath a black hood. Claire's throat closed with instinctive horror. The collector. Ben whispered, eyes wide. They sent the collector. The figure stepped closer, its footsteps silent. Every street lamp it passed dimmed, one by one, plunging the town into a creeping, unnatural dusk. The collector stopped 10 feet in front of the truck. Then it raised one skeletal, shadow-cloaked arm, and pointed at Claire. Pain erupted in her neck, the mark burning red-hot, like iron pressed to flesh. She cried out, clutching her throat as visions poured into her mind. Flames, bones cracking, the house, deeper and older than it looked on the outside, filled with whispers and names she didn't recognize. One word rose above the rest. Offering. Ben gripped her shoulder, shaking her. Listen to me. This thing isn't going to stop. If you stay in this body, it'll take you piece by piece. But there might be another way. Another way, she gasped. What? How? Ben licked his lips. The Holloways made a deal with that thing under the house. But they never said the offering had to die. Just that it had to return. Claire's breath came sharp and quick. Return where? He met her eyes. To the house. Back to Ash Lane. Back to the basement. Lightning flashed in her mind. The storm, the screaming wood, the weight of something alive beneath the floorboards of that cursed place. I'm not going back there, she whispered. You might not have a choice. As if answering her thought, the collector stepped forward again, arms still outstretched. From beneath its robe, dozens of thin, black tendrils began to snake out, unraveling in the fog like the roots of a dead tree. Each tendril ended in something sharp. Claws, teeth, hooks. The mark on Claire's neck burned. Ben reached beneath his seat and pulled out something Claire hadn't expected. An old, cracked leather-bound book. Symbols littered its cover, curling and ancient. "You know spells," she hissed, blinking through the pain. "I know one," he said grimly. "One that might buy us enough time to get to the house." The collector's tendrils scraped against the truck's hood, leaving deep gashes in the metal. Claire gripped the door handle, ignoring the pain. Then start chanting. Ben flipped the book open. The words inside writhed on the page, twisting like worms under glass. He started reading, and the collector started running. Ben's voice rose above the creaking of metal and the rasping drag of claws along the truck's frame, chanting in a harsh, guttural language that felt wrong in the air, as if the words themselves hated being spoken aloud. The symbols in the book shifted, curling like smoke, rearranging as he read. Claire pressed herself against the passenger door, hand on the handle, eyes locked on the collector. It was fast now. No gliding. No slow, ceremonial stalking. It was running toward them, arms out, rags flapping behind it like the shrouds of a funeral corpse carried on a storm wind. And the sound, like metal tearing underwater, like a scream trapped in mud, followed it as the fog rippled outward. Ben shouted the final syllable. The book ignited in blue flame, burning from the center outward, ancient ink curling into nothingness. A shockwave burst from the truck. Not light, not sound, but something deep, like a ripple through bone. For a moment, the collector stumbled, rags flaring, the tendrils retreating as if slapped by invisible hands. Claire didn't wait. She threw the door open, landing hard on the wet street, the mark pulsing with every heartbeat. The burning didn't stop, but now, she could feel something else. A pull, not from the thing in front of her, but from behind. Back the way they'd come. Back toward Ash Lane. As if the house itself had felt her absence and wanted her to return. "Move," Ben yelled. "It won't hold it long." They ran. Past dark storefronts, abandoned houses with dead Christmas lights still tangled in their gutters, through alleys slick with rain and rot. Behind them, the collector straightened slowly, peeling itself from the blue flames, shaking like a spider regaining balance. It smiled. Or maybe that was just the folds of its hood shifting, and resumed its hunt. Claire's lungs burned, the mark pulsing with direction, dragging her mind and soul backward through memory. As she ran, images surfaced unbidden. The old basement door in the Holloway house, the one always locked. The smell of wet earth when her grandfather died. Her mother's funeral, the way the priest hesitated during the blessing. The family had known. They'd all known. And they'd let her come here anyway. They reached the edge of town. There it was. Ash Lane. Waiting for her like the throat of some vast, sleeping animal. "We can't outrun it," Claire breathed. "I have to go back." Ben grabbed her wrist, his face pale. "You go in there alone, you don't come back." Claire stared at him. "If I don't go, it'll never stop. Not just after me. After everyone." Something shifted behind Ben's eyes. Not fear. Recognition. He knew this kind of sacrifice. Maybe had made one himself once. He nodded. "Then we go together." Lightning flickered in the bruised sky. And then the collector was there. At the far end of the road, red eyes twin beacons cutting through the storm. It didn't run this time. It floated toward them, smooth, deliberate, all claws and shadow, dragging the fog behind it like a veil. Claire took a step forward. The house waited. The debt waited. And somewhere beneath the old rotting floorboards of that cursed home, something older than her family's name was hungry. The final chapter wasn't going to be written in blood alone. It was going to be written in choice. "Let's finish this," Claire whispered. And together, they walked into the dark. The house was waiting for them. As Claire and Ben crossed the overgrown yard, the rain slowed to a dead, suffocating drizzle. Every step toward the front porch felt like sinking into deeper, colder water. The floorboards beneath their feet groaned, not from rot, but from breath. The whole place was alive, swelling faintly, like lungs filling with air before a scream. Behind them, the collector advanced with slow certainty. No rush. No panic. It knew it would get what it came for. Claire could feel the mark burning hotter now, as though reacting to the nearness of the thing beneath the house. Basement, she rasped. It's under the basement. Ben nodded, jaw set. He glanced back once at the collector, then followed her through the collapsing doorway into the hollow remains of her family's home. Inside, the stench of mold and rot was overpowering, but under it was something else, something older. Not decay. Soil. Rich, loamy earth, wet with more than just water. Claire led the way past splintered furniture, sagging wallpaper, and the cracked remnants of Holloway heirlooms. The mark on her neck pulsed steadily, guiding her to the door beneath the staircase. The basement door. It was open. It had never been open before. Cold, black air poured from the threshold, thicker than smoke, curling around her legs like welcoming hands. Ben paused. You sure? Claire hesitated. Then she stepped through. The stairs were ancient wood, slick with mildew, each creak like a scream swallowed by the wet dark. As they descended, the blackness thickened, not just the absence of light, but a physical presence. A weight. Then her foot hit the floor. It wasn't concrete anymore. Dirt. Cold, wet earth stretched out in all directions. Claire's family had built this house on top of something. Something buried. Something bound. The mark flared with heat so intense she thought it might sear through her skin. And then, through the dark, a voice spoke. Not aloud. Not from behind or beside, but inside her skull. Holloway blood. The offering returns. The ground beneath her feet shuddered. Shapes stirred in the walls. Skeletal outlines of those who had come before, their bones merged with the earth, jaws locked in silent screams. Old faces. Relatives. Ancestors. Sacrifices. Claire stumbled but stayed standing. I'm not here to die, she growled. I'm here to end this. The voice laughed. Not like a human, not like anything alive. It was like stone grinding against stone, echoing in every hollow of her bones. There is no end. There is only payment. There is only hunger. Behind her, Ben cried out. She spun. The collector had followed. It stood at the top of the stairs, its rags fluttering unnaturally despite the still air, red eyes locked on her. Ben raised a shaking hand, clutching something, a broken charm, an old sigil, something weak, desperate, human. But the collector didn't move toward him. It pointed at Claire again. The debt. Now. And suddenly, Claire understood. It wasn't just about the Holloways. It wasn't just about her. The thing beneath the house, the ancient, buried root of it all, had been fed for generations. The family had given pieces of themselves, of others, anything to keep it sleeping, to keep it satisfied. But not anymore. Claire looked down at her bleeding palms, at the oily black blood seeping from her cuts. The mark wasn't a brand of ownership, it was a key. The family had carved it into their flesh generations ago, binding themselves to this thing forever. Unless someone broke the cycle. Unless someone gave it what it truly wanted. Not death. Truth. I'm not afraid of you, she whispered to the thing below. And I'm done paying for their sins. With her last ounce of strength, she reached into her coat pocket, and pulled out the old, torn invitation. Attendance mandatory. A symbol was hidden in the ink. A seal of offering, the contract itself. She tore it in half. The mark on her neck burst into flame, but this time, it didn't burn. It released. Black smoke poured from the wound, curling upward like a soul freed from prison. The collector screamed, its shape unraveling like cloth pulled into a furnace, tendrils snapping back as the binding shattered. The earth below howled. The house shuddered. And then, silence. The mark was gone. The invitation was ash. And the collector was nothing but drifting embers in the void. Ben coughed beside her, blinking like a man waking from a long nightmare. What did you do? Claire stood shakily, wiping her bloodied hands on her jeans. I ended it, she said softly. But deep beneath the house, something ancient shifted once more. Not in hunger this time. In interest. Silence. For the first time since stepping into the Holloway house, there was true silence, Not the uneasy hush before something breaks, not the breathless tension of a storm building, but absolute stillness. But then, from beneath the soil, it moved. Claire felt it. Not with her ears, but in her bones. Something deep below, stretching out like ancient roots twisting under the whole town, coiled tight in the dark. It wasn't angry. It wasn't screaming for more blood. It was watching. Ben steadied himself beside her, his face pale. Is it over? No, Claire whispered. It's awake. The earth under her feet cracked open. Not violently, but with a slow, deliberate motion, as if something immense had simply shifted position in its sleep. Through the spreading fissure, light shone. Not warm, not cold, just wrong. Pale, silvery, like moonlight seen through water. And then the voice came again. Not a scream this time. Not hunger. You broke the chain. Claire stood taller, defiant despite her shaking limbs. No more sacrifices. No more Holloways feeding you. It ends here. Silence answered her for a heartbeat. Then, good. The ground trembled. The chain was never mine. It was theirs. Your family bound me with lies. Blood and fear held me, kept me hungry. You freed me. Ben took a step back. Claire. But she lifted her hand. Let it speak. The light from below swirled upward now, forming vague shapes. Faces, maybe, or the hints of something older than language. All those years, generations of the Holloways feeding this thing, not knowing what they were really chained to. It wasn't a demon. It wasn't God. It wasn't even death. It was something forgotten. Buried. A root of something else entirely. Not evil. Not good. Just there. Watching. Waiting. Now I offer you what they never would. A hum built beneath her feet, like the strumming of a string stretched tight across the world. Not death. Not punishment. Knowledge. Claire's throat felt dry. What kind of knowledge? The light swirled. Shapes began to emerge. Memories not her own. Visions of the Holloways, first settlers on this land. Of deals struck in desperate times. Of ancient things slumbering beneath the hills and roots, older than language, older than maps, older than fear itself. The truth. The root. All that came before. Take it, and your blood will be your own again. Ben grabbed her shoulder now, hard. Don't. You don't owe it anything. But Claire knew. This wasn't about debt. Not anymore. This was about understanding. The Holloways had trapped this thing, used it, and paid the price in generations of whispered madness and rot. They'd called it a monster because they'd been afraid of the truth. It wasn't a curse. It was a mirror. Slowly, deliberately, Claire reached toward the swirling light. And when her fingers brushed the glow, the world opened. Not physically, not violently, but completely. Every secret, every lie, every hidden truth of her family's cursed blood poured into her mind. She saw the first deal, the first mark, the first sacrifice. She saw the Holloways build their lives on rot, pretending they didn't smell it. And she saw something else too. An exit. A way out, not just for herself, but for everyone tied to this ancient, broken pact. The voice echoed one last time. You are free. And now, so am I. The light vanished. The house groaned, then began to collapse. Not in violence, but like an old man finally laying down after a long life of mistakes. Ben shielded her as the walls crumbled around them. And then, only the wet earth remained. No house. No voices. No chains. Just the faint smell of rich, healthy soil and the last embers of something ancient, watching, no longer trapped. Claire stood alone in the ruin of her family's sins, her palms bloody but clean of corruption, the mark gone, her blood her own again. What now? Ben asked softly. Claire looked at the horizon. The storm had broken. Dawn was coming, faint and pink, clean and real. We bury it, she said. For good this time. Behind them, the last of Ash Lane drifted into silence, the house finally, gone. Thanks for listening me my followers. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Bye bye for now.